This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation. I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bonds, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Jamie, who is the CEO of Case. Jamie, thank you for joining us. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, Alex.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, look, before we dive in, you are it's the most buzzwords we've ever had in a business that we've had on. I think BPO, Agentic AI, outsourcing, great stuff. So, but look, you've been very kind to meet with me before, and I know Pace. But for those that don't know you or don't know Pace, it'd be great if you could just give us a quick intro to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jamie. I'm our founder and CEO here at Pace. Pace is the agentic workforce for insurance. We work primarily with insurance carriers, large wholesalers and distributors, to help them automate back office operations tasks. So traditionally, we're taking on a lot of tasks that either were outsourced or in-house operations teams are doing on the policy servicing and claims side, and aiming to do that instead of with a large human team using a set of AI agents to handle those tasks end to end. And we're a team based here in New York. Also, we've been expanding a lot into Europe, which is sort of where I think some of this conversation got started. And lucky to be working with some of the largest carriers in the world now with Prudential, where we're handling thousands of hours of tasks with AI agents at scale, all the way through to specialty mutual groups like the Mutual Group, GuideOne, and then on the tech forward side, folks like Newfront and tech forward brokers as well. So hopefully it gives a little bit of a sense of what we're doing, what we're up to.
Amazing. And that's quite a lot of penetration into a market for relatively short tenure. What's driving that? Is it the timing of the awareness of agentic AI, or I don't know, just pure talent on your team, or what do you take? Because within the short tenure, you've got some real marquee clients.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what we've seen is from our end, I think the last year, I think a lot of our customers looked from, hey, let's take these AI pilots and figure out how we get to production. And I think for us, outsourced operations and sort of the back office operations tasks of policy servicing and claims are sort of just the ideal places to get started with agentic AI. And the reason for that is they're highly repetitive. They have this sort of unstructured data with lots of different edge cases, needing to follow up for missing information, all that kind of stuff. And then critically, there's also sort of a hard ROI component. I think a lot of our customers, previously were using things like co-pilots that you can have productivity improvements for internal teams. But I think what's been very exciting for our customers is, hey, I can come in, take an existing process that's been outsourced, take their existing standard operating procedure, get the agents live very quickly into production, and then have a hard ROI outcome because you're able to reduce that cost contract, or be able to process more submissions faster, or to be able to complete a claim more accurately. And I think that's kind of being able to really tie back to those ROI outcomes and be able to do that very quickly in the matter of weeks. Many of these pilots are going to production. That I think has really been the big driver for us.
What's the I was thinking as you're talking about the security that comes with working with a BPO. So you're doing a BPO, model, as opposed to like onboarding some software that solves some of these, like maybe an agent-specific software that solves some of the same problems.
Yeah.
Why should people go down like sort of the BPO route versus the other? Like my inclination is to think you're sort of solution agnostic to a certain degree, whereas someone's trying to sell you something. Is that the feedback you get, or there are kind of other reasons why people are drawn to working with you rather than, like I say, an off the shelf product as such?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for us, it's interesting because, what I think is most important to our customers is the outcome, that this work is getting done end to end. And I think, the prior, transformations for various different pieces of technology, whether that was, the core systems of record or the UiPath, the RPA sort of products of the world, or the OCR or document extraction products. A lot of those were sort of like these point solutions that were looking to, really implement their software. And I think we're seeing a big shift in the market from selling the product or selling, the software to selling the work and selling the actual outcome. And that's very much, the world that, that we're pushing towards, which is, we charge our customers on an outcome based pricing model. So it's for successful transactions that we're processing. And while we do, we have a product that, allows customers to configure and deploy these agents very quickly, and they can self-serve, build, some of our customers now with tens of agents plus in production. It's much less about, hey, let's, force implement this piece of software, and more, hey, you're outsourcing, all of your submission tasks or endorsement tasks or renewals or your FNOL. How can we actually just make sure we get those tasks done end to end, faster, more accurately, cheaper, more scalably? And I think that is really what's resonating with our customers versus, hey, here's this, point solution that'll solve some part of the product problem, but, you'll still have to do some of the work. It's really the outcome based and doing it kind of end to end and solving that work that I think has resonated, because it sort of takes on what the BPO was doing previously versus just implementing another piece of software.
Because I think the challenge for software has always been, and this is my work experience when I worked in the insurance industry, but also even now, like we'll roll out new technology in our business, a very small business. You've got to do that winning hearts and minds to get the adoption, because the software can be incredible, but if people aren't utilizing it and using it, then you're still not going to see the ROI that you expect. But obviously with the BPO, they are outsourcing this chunk of work or this stream of work, and you don't have to win people over. Is that sort of another advantage there, that there's no cultural shift that needs to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that we've been able to deploy quickly. And I think for folks on the, listening to the podcast, I think are thinking about, which use cases they want to get started with, how they're thinking about, approaching their AI roadmap. I think what you just mentioned is spot on, which is starting with the things that don't require a ton of change management. And the nice thing about, BPO work is that it's already outsourced, and it's already like well codified in these standard operating procedures. So what the task is. Oftentimes our customers will send us these SOPs that are, 60 pages long, 100 steps, but that's exactly what these agents need to have the context to be able to complete these tasks. And then because they're outsourced, these agents can pick up the work, just from email the same way that a BPO team does. And so to your team, it doesn't have to look any different. The work is just getting done versus, training up on a new piece of software or a Copilot. The part where I think we see the training that I think is really interesting is the types of profiles that have been really good at building these agents. So taking these SOPs and sort of getting them live into production. And, we've seen a big rise in the industry of forward deployed engineers. We have an, amazing FDE team that, goes and sits alongside our customers to help them get their first agents live. But maybe even more interestingly has been seeing, once, we might build the first one or two agents with our customers, but then a lot of times sort of the operations managers, the folks that, previously were writing these SOPs and managing the BPO work, oftentimes they are building the next, 10 plus agents. And, for some of our customers, they have 10, 15 agents live in production now. And, the operations team has built, 2 through 15 basically. And what we're seeing is that a lot of the folks that are really good at doing that are the subject matter experts that are super close to the actual work. They understand the SOP. They're sort of spreadsheet kind of like technical, not writing code, because now it's possible to sort of build these agents with natural language. And so I think it's what's really exciting, and I think for folks on the podcast to be kind of looking out for in their organizations is these subject matter experts on the operations side. How can you kind of enable them to start to build their own agent workforce, and manage that? I think that the sort of democratization of that is happening very, very quickly as it just becomes easier and easier to build these agents with natural language.
Mm. Yeah, the empowerment thing is, I think, really it's like a nice positive message as well to have out there, where there's been a lot of, I don't think it's scaremongering. Obviously I'm coming from the perspective of talent. I think some of it's actually been really like quite willfully ignorant, I would say, when someone's trying to create like a software that replaces a whole section of like work in insurance. You're like, people are going to not necessarily lose their jobs, but people won't be, these teams won't be growing. So opportunities for the future, new people into the industry. Now, whether they want those jobs or not is a bigger, better conversation. But there's something nice about the positivity of even the language of saying, here's a tool set for the best people in your organization to build tools that help them help themselves, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think what's kind of cool is, for us, a lot of our customers, they're so exceptional at, running these operations at scale. And it's basically being able to take your best operations manager, your best VPO rep, and scale them massively. Because they're able to take, all the context that they've had in their head, with these SOPs, and now have a set of 30 AI agents that are kind of doing the work for them. And I think that is a hugely empowering, for the teams that we're working with. I think the other piece that we're seeing, I'm curious, if you're seeing this with your customers as well, is I actually just also think that the agents are actually massively expanding the market for the types of operations that are getting done. So, I kind of liken this to, with the rise of the internet, that's really where BPO and offshoring happened, right? The 90s to 2000s. Now there's internet, and you could kind of do this work from anywhere offshore and then be able to, send it back. And now I think what we're going to see is a big transition from, outsourcing offshore to outsourcing to AI. But what we're seeing is not just like this is lifting and shifting the existing market. It's also in a lot of cases, expanding kind of totally net new use cases that just weren't possible before. So I'll give you one example that we see. Claims QA has been kind of a major use case for us. And, in a lot of cases, our customers are today, sampling maybe 5 or 10% of their claims and sort of seeing how, they're doing from kind of an accuracy standpoint. And what's cool is not just, the PACE agents are able to process hundreds of rules and do that more accurately than human teams, where they're able to, find some missing or kind of things that don't line up to the claims guidelines. But also, we don't have to do this just on 5% anymore. Why don't we do it across 100%? And instead of doing it post fact as an audit, why don't we have kind of always on QA that is happening in real time? And so I think a lot of like what we think of as, outsourced today might actually really look like, insourcing and massively expanding kind of what your in-house team can do. So I think it's both exciting to see kind of the empowerment of those teams, but also just the amount of work that we can get done, I think is going to dramatically, expand the market that these agents can help with.
Yeah, the sort of 100% thing is a really interesting concept, and it speaks to, if you think about insurance, just the insurance industry, there's a promise to pay, um, and then there's a promise for fairness and accuracy, right? That's assumptive, and we know that's
Yeah.
not achievable, but we're now into an era where that is achievable. And we're not saying you're not, you shouldn't be in the position where a claim falls through the cracks that should have been paid,
Totally.
because we can constantly be auditing 100% of the work that we're doing for quality. So, yeah, I think the opportunities are vast. And then that actually is a more positive conversation to say there are still going to be people responsible for these agents. This is almost potentially a growth of certain areas of the business, because we didn't promise this to customers, and now we can promise this to customers. And that's a potential competitive advantage as well. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I've got to challenge you, Jamie, haven't I? Otherwise, this wouldn't be much of an interview. Why can't, because all the BPO firms out there will be saying that they can do this anyway. Why can't they? Why are they unable to build an agentic workforce for these organisations? I mean, obviously, this is a soft pass because I'm sure you've got a pre-packaged answer for this as well.
Well, first your consistency point, I think that's just so spot on, which is like, customer or insurers want to deliver this for their insured, but it's just logistically impossible when it's humans because, if you're looking at your 15th claim and you're trying to compare a claim file back to 400 rules, it's just impossible. That's not a good task, for humans, but it is particularly a good task for AI agents where it's easy, with, to look at 400 rules over many thousand claim file and do that thousands of times, 24/7 in parallel. So yeah, I think that was a really good point, and I think something that our customers are seeing a lot is like, how do you kind of raise the bar for consistency?
Sure.
On the BPO side, I think, yeah, this is definitely something that we have been talking a lot with our customers about. So today in insurance, about $70 billion is spent on BPOs, which is a mind-boggling number because if you think about this across banking, financial services, and insurance more broadly, it's about $400 billion, which is roughly the entire size of the enterprise software market. So it is obviously like a huge market today. And I think many of the BPO players realize that, AI agents are, existential to their business. And you're sort of seeing this both in the private markets where, previously private equity buyers, I think, were big acquirers of BPOs. And many of them, I think, when we talk with them, don't really want to buy these BPO businesses anymore because they're responsible then for figuring out how this is going to navigate the transition, which is sort of existential to the core business model. And you're seeing the same thing in public markets where, I think a lot of the BPOs are also trading down. And, the reason is these are, obviously scaled organizations with great customers and, really smart people. And so they certainly realize the opportunity ahead. But I think there's a bit of, the classic innovator's dilemma of, the business model for BPOs is on a time and materials basis. When you're charging, 10, 20, $30,000, $40,000 a head, and you're charging per person, that starts to become very difficult when you think about, okay, with AI agents, we might need, 2 orders of magnitude less people. Like we're seeing today, we're handling tens of thousands of tasks at scale. We projected that we would need 2 orders of magnitude larger operations team than we have today. And the reason is we've just been able to surround, a very small set of highly leveraged folks with AI agents to do that work. And so that's really challenging when you look at, some of these BPOs where their core pricing is on, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are doing this work, and having to kind of like reinvent that business model at scale. I think the other challenge is just deploying this technology fast enough. And so you really for us, uh, about 70% of our team is AI engineers. And it's just
Right.
very, very hard for BPOs to be able to attract that kind of talent and then to be able to deliver products very quickly across all the different use cases that they might be working against. Whereas we can kind of be very focused on getting these agents to work as a product across each of these, each of the use cases we're taking on versus
Mhm.
trying to retroactively fit it to the business. So I think there's both a technology sort of challenge. There's also
Mm.
the kind of business model challenge. But
Mm.
I think everyone is certainly working towards the sort of $70 billion opportunity in insurance, and that's part of what makes building this company very exciting.
Yeah. And there's a resonance there because we're pretty close on, on my background was claims. I've done a lot of work in the claims space, and now I do a lot of work with like claims technology businesses, and there's a resonance there with the legal industry. So we've kept on top of kind of legal tech,
Yeah.
and it has the same sort of challenge there, where the legal industry is built on hours and people
Yep.
deployed. So it's kind of like countercultural. If you heavily embrace like legal tech from a law firm perspective, it kind of you're almost turkey's voting for Christmas. It is a real like challenge. So yeah, there's a cultural issue there. There's a business model issue there as well. So it's got real similarities with BPO. We're seeing how fast that sector is growing, and legal is being decimated. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to school I wouldn't want to be in my like sixth year of law school now, or whatever it is currently. I
Yeah.
don't
I'm curious that
know.
I mean, it's interesting because you've seen this both on the legal side and now, and on the claim side before, but
Sure.
the sort of rate at which we're seeing people now kind of basically have a lawyer, or kind of maybe not a lawyer, but kind of counsel from an AI, ChatGPT type product in their pocket to be able to, spin up very quick demand letters or things like that. I think
Mm,
that's quite, it's like very challenging for the insurance industry. Second part, also now we're seeing a lot of these models be very good at generating images, which I think is
mm,
creating, challenges around, finding, or how do we verify and find truth and think about fraud. I'm curious that you're kind
mm,
of seeing that across some of your customers. I think like that the legal AI was obviously like kind of very early to this wave, and I think it's probably having a big impact now on kind of the other, on the other side with insurers seeing a lot of these AI generated demands and other things like that come in.
yeah. Yeah, there's been some quite funny cases actually that I've seen. Someone created an AI agent specifically for challenging parking challenges and parking fines,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't know, the libertarian in me is just like, yeah, go on AI. I was like, this is brilliant. I'm going to park where I like and just use my bot to challenge everything. But we are seeing that on the image thing. Actually, interestingly, I was at a pitch last year. I want to say it was at ITI. I'm not sure. Insurtech Insights, but
Yeah.
one of the people there was pitching a tool which could tell whether an image had been adopted or created, and that was the whole premise of this tool. And as we're seeing it now, it's becoming increasingly required. So yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like an arms race on both sides. So you can do all these things to the the legal sector. They get these tools they can do more efficient, but it gives the layman, the public, the tools to fight back. And it's a real interesting juxtaposition. But I think when you take kind of a step back and just apply it to insurance, most of the time, you're just applying efficiency to things that happened anyway. So the power still sits with, the person with the biggest pockets because they've got the biggest tools. But it is interesting as an arms race to see that there are, in pocket things that you can use as a consumer. I think really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's something what we're seeing as well. Yeah. I think
yeah.
just with the volume of demands, I think our customers really want, the other side with insurers really need to also be adopting AI tools very quickly because of how fast the legal adoption has been.
Yeah, we're nearly at time. I don't know where it's gone, but so I'm mindful of a couple of things that I know I want to touch on. And I'll put them both to you. You can tackle them in the order that you want. I think people would be really interested to know, and you've touched on a few like elements. What are the kind of like most either it'd be great to hear some actual case studies, real life case studies of what people have been working with you
Yeah,
on, and if there's any themes. Yeah, let's start there. I've got a secondary question after that, but I'll start with that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so I think I mentioned, kind of cross section of the market that we're working with is primarily carriers, mutuals, large wholesalers, and larger brokers. Any folks that are really spending, significantly on BPOs and back office operations. And so, for us, to give an example, like Prudential, where we're working with them on policy servicing and quality assurance, they're seeing thousands of hours of work saved with a set of AI agents at best in class accuracy and speed. And that was an example where we went, very fast from pilot to production and to a multi-year contract. So that's one example on the policy servicing and QA side. I think one maybe on the claims side that would be interesting to talk about is maybe we can talk the full life cycle. So for a very large carrier, we are working with them on first notice of loss, and I think the goals that they had was both from a cost perspective of how can they take this from BPOs and operations work into agents, but also from an accuracy perspective. And what's been really exciting is seeing double digit percentage improvement in accuracy that are at this point it's they in talking with some of our customers, they're like, we can't actually say if it's even more accurate because it's more accurate than what humans are doing. So we're talking in many of our cases for our customers 99% plus accuracy SLAs. And then the last thing is speed, and I think speed we've seen happen both on the FNOL side where cycle times are able to reduce by 95% plus from hours or days to minutes, but also on the submission side. So we're working with a handful of both brokers and then also carriers on submission intake, where they're able to now triage and get back to 100% of submissions much faster, and actually go and win that business. Because in a competitive world where these submissions are going to many different places, being able to turn that around much faster is really critical. And then maybe the last one I'll say on the QA side, we're working with a handful of claims teams, much further down the life cycle, where they were able to significantly reduce the sort of review and cycle times for claims, but also have like a 98% accuracy rate on the claims that QA that they're seeing. And so I think those are a few examples. I think if I'm applying this more back to listeners here versus just our case studies, my recommendation is start with a couple of use cases, one on the policy servicing side and one on the claim side. On the policy servicing side, I'd start where there's the most volume and there's a real competitive advantage. So I'd say submissions and renewals tend to be really good places to start. And then I continue through the policy servicing lifecycle. So I go loss run data collection, quote and policy checking, endorsement processing, COIs, all the way through to billing. And then on the claim side, same thing. I'd start FNOL. There's tons of volume there. Triage and assignment, more around the claims file creation, because a lot of work that adjusters are doing outside of just adjusting. And then I'd go into sort of claims QA, closure, bordereau, those types of tasks. So that's how I usually recommend for customers: start at the top of the funnel with the most volume and the most spend, and kind of work your way down.
Love it. It's like going to one of these fancy small plates restaurants. A couple of small plates, and then we'll come back later and maybe we'll tackle some larger things. So, and actually, you've answered my question. I was going to say, like, what's baby steps of getting into something like an agentic AI BPO workforce? So you've answered it without me even asking. So brilliant. Jamie, we're at time. I knew we'd have a really good conversation. I think it's so pertinent that we have this conversation now because I think for me, it's just this. I think the fear of adopting like new technologies is always there, and I think being able to do it within the confines of a BPO space where you've got someone and can build banks that's right for you and uniquely right for you, and you can still maintain that competitive advantage. That's what I'm hearing most of. People kind of thinking, well, if I buy off the shelf, my competitors can do that. Whereas if I work with a BPO firm, you can still have that competitive edge. So, great, Simon. Thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast and spending some time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see, I think 2026 is going to be a huge year for AI agents. And I'm excited. Hopefully we can do this again, maybe a year from now and see everything that's happened. I think it'll be exciting.
I hope so. We'll do it on your yacht, Jamie. Then we know it's gone well.
In the meantime, looking forward to seeing you for many of the conference road shows ahead. It'll be fun.
You will do. Cheers, buddy.